Committee on Oversight and Government Reform will come to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. We're meeting today to talk about the United States Secret Service and the accountability for the March 14th, 2015 incident. On March 14th, two senior Secret Service special agents, one had the title of Deputy Special Agent in Charge, the Presidential Protective Detail, that's Mr. Conley, and the other one had a title of Assistant to the Special Agent in Charge for the Washington Field Office. That would be Mr. George Ogilvie. The allegation and the concern was that they drove through a criminal scene investigation of a potential bomb at the White House. Following the incident, there were allegations that the two agents were intoxicated after being at a bar downtown for a retirement party. Most concerning, however, was the allegation neither agent was given a sobriety test, nor were the agents reprimanded in any way. Part of the concern was what happened in this potential bomb scene, and what did they do about it? What did the supervisors know? When did they know it? And how did they report it up the chain of command? Instead, everyone involved was told to go home and pretend like nothing happened. To get a better sense of what happened on March 4th, Ranking Member Cummings and I met with Secret Service Director Clancy. Director Clancy could not answer our questions. Next, Mr. Cummings and I scheduled a public hearing on the incident. At the hearing, Director Clancy said he could not answer the questions. Instead, he deferred to the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General, who was investigating the matter. That investigation is now complete. We're pleased to have Mr. Roth here with us today to talk about the conclusions of that investigation. Now that the facts are in, it is time for accountability. The Inspector General determined it was more likely than not both agents, Conley and Ogilvie's judgment, was impaired by alcohol. Since the sobriety test wasn't given to either agent the night of March 4th, the Inspector General came to the conclusion based on the facts. These included both Conley and Ogilvie spent 5 hours in a bar running up a bar tab that included 14 drinks after 2 hours of an open bar. And the objective behavior of the two experienced Secret Service agents who should have known better. The agents' impaired judgment resulted them in driving, and I quote, into a crime scene inches from what the rest of the Secret Service was treating as a potential explosive device, and which, under different circumstances, could have been. Let me read that quote again. Sorry for the disruption. The agent's impaired judgment resulted them in driving into what I quote from the report, into a crime scene inches from what the rest of the Secret Service was treating as a potential explosive device, and which, under different circumstances, could have endangered their own lives and those of the uniformed division officers responding, end quote. If that had been true, if it had been a real bomb, these agents would have been lucky to be alive. They were endangering the lives of too many people by doing what they had done. Following the incident, the story of the incident began making its way up the chain of command, where it eventually reached Mr. Conley himself, for you see, he is in the chain of command. Though required to report what happened, Mr. Conley chose not to. Mr. Conley even met with his boss, Special Agent in Charge Robert Buster, on March 6th to talk about the suspicious package incident, but made no mention of being involved with the incident himself. Mr. Ogilvie, likewise, had a duty to self-report and chose not to. As the Inspector General found, their failure to report, quote, reflects either poor judgment or an affirmative desire to hide their activities, end quote. Relying on the honor system for reporting this type of egregious misconduct does not work when agents do not act honorably. Senior uniformed division leaders also violated their duty to report by failing to inform Mr. Conley's boss, the head of the Presidential Protective Division. Perhaps the situation would have been dealt with earlier if the agents were given breathalyzer tests that night. An officer on the scene told the Inspector General the watch commander decided not to administer a breathalyzer to Mr. Conley and Mr. Ogilvie because he was worried to do so would be a, quote, career killer, end quote. The watch commander was probably right. Additionally, as the Inspector General stated, the watch commander's decision was likely influenced by the, quote, Secret Service reputation for punishing or ignoring those who would further investigate or report violations, end quote, such as drunk driving. And that is why the problems that led to this incident extend well beyond March 4th, 2015. It is one of the ongoing concerns that the deep-seated cultural problems within the Secret Service are pervasive and they continue. We have thousands of good men and women who serve this country honorably and patriotically. We appreciate them, but they are not above the law. The Secret Service has to abide by the law as well. We've heard over and over again the source of morale problems within the Secret Service is that senior personnel are treated differently from the rank and file, and that the uniform division is treated differently from the agents. We have little doubt that because of this disparate treatment, Conley and Ogilvy believed they could act in a way where they would be able to get away with it. The culture of special treatment for senior agents must stop. It's an embarrassing and highly concerning pattern of misconduct and security incidents that need to end. The Secret Service mission is too important. I want to commend Mr. Roth and his team for their good work on this report. They acted swiftly, they put a lot of people towards it, and it's produced a very worthwhile result, and that's why we're here today. We look forward in the future to hearing from Director Clancy on this incident and learning whether the agency plans to take disciplinary actions against the individuals involved. I have a concern that just retiring or stepping aside doesn't solve the problem, that they don't truly have the consequences that would be associated with such egregious behavior. The job of the Secret Service is too important not to reprimand those who exercise shockingly poor judgment, which could put the President and his family at risk. One of the other things that we're going to explore is how within the Department of Homeland Security, there are different tables of penalties within the department itself. While there's a standard for the Department of Homeland Security, there seems to be a different standard within the Secret Service and other agencies themselves. And yet this is the very reason one of the reasons we formed the Department of Homeland Security is to make sure that they got best practices and management together so they could have this uniform across, but it's not. In fact, one of the things that the Inspector General found is that even the most senior people didn't understand what the alcohol policy was. Sort of an important thing to do, and certainly an important thing to understand and know. Again, we appreciate the good work of Mr. Roth and look forward to a good, vibrant discussion today about his findings from him and his team. With that, I'll now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cummings, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you, General Roth, and your team for all your hard work on this investigation from the very beginning. You worked with us and met with us, and we took your guidance, and we really appreciate all that you all have done. You all started immediately after receiving these allegations on March 12th, a week after the incident, and finished them in less than 8 weeks, and that says a lot. In that time, they conducted an impressive 48 interviews and obtained a wide variety of documents and other materials. The report released by the Inspector General confirms some key allegations, such as the claim that 2 agents, Mr. Conley and Mr. Ogilvy, in fact had been drinking before driving a government vehicle to the White House and then driving their government vehicles home. The report also debunks other allegations. It concludes, for example, that there is, and I quote, no evidence that the video of the incident was intentionally deleted or destroyed, end of quote. This was a model of how an investigation should be conducted, and it demonstrates why Congress and this committee in particular relies so heavily on the work of our IGs. Unfortunately, this report makes clear that there's still much work to be done to improve the culture at the Secret Service. At a previous hearing on September 30th of last year, I expressed grave concern with a Secret Service culture that seems to punish those who raise concerns, a culture in which employees are afraid to report incidents up the chain of command. At the time, we were discussing an incident in 2011 when multiple shots were fired at the White House. One officer on the scene believed bullets had hit the White House, but she feared the consequences of disputing her superiors. As a result, it was not discovered until 4 days later that the White House had been struck 7 times. The Inspector General's report indicates that this cultural problem is indeed widespread. For example, the report highlights, and I quote, the Secret Service's reputation for punishing or ignoring those who would further investigate or report such violations. According to the Inspector General's report, some officers relayed that the watch commander at the scene on the night of the incident raised concerns. According to one officer, the watch commander told his colleagues that the agents who drove into the barricade were, and I quote, hammered, unquote. According to that officer, however, the watch commander said ordering a sobriety test would have been, and I quote, a career killer, end of quote. Therefore, no sobriety test was done, and both agents drove their government vehicles home after a night of drinking. The Inspector General's report concludes, and I quote, the watch commander's actions must be considered in light of the vast disparity in rank between the watch commander and Connolly, who was in the watch commander's chain of command, end of quote. I'm also extremely concerned because just 2 days ago, our committee conducted a key interview that further corroborates this view. Committee staff interviewed Alfonso Dyson, the Deputy Chief of the Uniform Division, who manages more than 600 officers. Mr. Dyson admitted to our committee staff that he had 2 telephone calls with Mr. Connolly on the night of the incident. One while Mr. Connolly was in the middle of the suspicious package scene, and another as Mr. Connolly was driving home later that night. In those calls, Mr. Dyson warned Mr. Connolly that the watch commander, and I quote, was going to make it a problem, end of quote. Mr. Dyson also admitted that he told Mr. Connolly that the watch commander might cause trouble for him. Mr. Dyson stated, and I quote, he was going to stir the pot. He was going to spread the rumors. He was going to get the guys riled up. That's what I believed, and that's what I relayed to DSAIC and Connolly, end of quote. This is simply unacceptable. Based on the IG report, the watch commander should have done more that night, not less. And it is appalling that senior Secret Service officials would disparage junior officers from doing the right thing. The agents and the officers of the Secret Service will never have the full trust of their colleagues while the fear of retaliation continues. Finally, let me conclude by thanking Director Clancy for his cooperation and quick action. As the Inspector General report concludes, and I quote, Director Clancy acted appropriately upon receiving information about potential misconduct, end of quote. The Inspector General also informed our committee that he received, quote, outstanding, end of quote, cooperation from Director Clancy and the Secret Service during the entire investigation. Although we had hoped that Director Clancy would be available today, this is Police Week, and he's attending several events to honor officers for acts of valor and the families of those who have fallen in the line of duty. And he called personally the chairman and yours truly to express his concern and his regrets that he could not be with us at this hearing. And I know that the chairman understood that, I understood it, and I want to thank him for all he's done. He has offered to reschedule for another date, and I look forward to hearing from him, Mr. Chairman. And with that, I'll yield back.
I thank the ranking member, and it is true that I really do believe through experience that Director Clancy has been more than responsive to requests from Congress, and his availability is very much appreciated. We may disagree on some points, obviously, but his accessibility has been one of the best that we have seen. I also want to highlight just, you know, at this moment, the Secret Service was evidently involved and engaged in apprehending somebody who was trying to fly a drone, basing this solely on media reports, but every day these men and women are dealing with very exceptionally difficult situations. Something can go wrong at any given time. They do far more than we ever hear or see, and we greatly appreciate that. It is not enough to just say we appreciate it. They need to know we love and care for them, and when we pray for them, and they have a no-fail mission. And that's why when something goes so terribly wrong, we got to learn from it and make sure that that we fix the problems, because some of this egregious behavior is just unacceptable. I would also note that just literally happening here today, the Secretary Award for Valor was given to one of the Secret Service agents, William Uher. I hope I'm pronouncing his name properly. He's the hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania. Duty station is Washington, D.C. Let me just read the paragraph. While en route to work on November 22nd, 2014, the U.S. Secret Service Sergeant Technician William Uher came upon a motor vehicle accident at the Baltimore-Washington Parkway and was the first to respond. After notifying 911, he went to the scene to offer assistance. When Sergeant Uher noticed flames originating from underneath the hood of the vehicle, he removed the occupant, who was later determined to have a broken pelvis and unable to walk. And the men and women who serve as first responders, people like that who do this great work, can't thank them enough. They're dealing with tough situations, but we expect a lot. And we expect that people will make mistakes, but not of such egregious consequences that it puts the mission in danger, puts others in danger, and certainly can never, ever put the president in danger. He's our president. I don't care, Republican or Democrat, I don't care how you feel about the president, he's our president, and he has to stay safe. And that's why it's so pivotal that we continue to investigate that. I will hold the record open for 5 legislative days for any members who would like to submit a written statement, but we'll now recognize the witness who's here today, who represents a large, big group of people who spent a lot of good time and innovative, investigative work to come to this meeting today. So it's with pleasure that we welcome Inspector General John Roth. Mr. Roth assumed the post of Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security on March 10th, 2014, after previously serving as the Director of the Office of Criminal Investigations at the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. Before that, he had had a long and distinguished career with the Department of Justice. Welcome. Pursuant to committee rules, all witnesses are to be sworn before they testify, so if you will please rise and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Let the record clearly reflect that the witness answered in the affirmative. Mr. Roth, we will now recognize you, and don't even bother starting the clock. We'll hear your report, and then when you're done, we'll ask questions. Mr. Roth.
Thank you. Chairman Chaffetz, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me here today. As you know, we have made public our report concerning the incident at the White House complex on the evening of March 4th. Our objective was to conduct a factual inquiry and to assess the reasonableness of the actions of the individuals involved. We conducted this investigation from March 12th until April 30th. This inquiry centered on the activities of 2 senior Secret Service supervisors. Mark Connolly is the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Presidential Protective Division, a position that he has held for the last 2 years. Connolly's duties include all aspects of White House security. George Ogilvie is the Assistant to the Special Agent in charge at the Washington Field Office and is a supervisor in the Protection Squad. He has previously worked in the Presidential Protection Division. The report that we wrote is a summary of the investigation, and it is attached to my written testimony. The materials of our investigation that we produced, our reports of interviews, the physical evidence, and the documents we found have been turned over to the Secret Service in accordance with our regular procedures. The Inspector General's office does not make recommendations as to whether or what personnel action should be taken, but leaves that to the Secret Service. Our duties in this instance are purely investigative. The report makes some conclusions based on the evidence that we found. For example, it was more likely than not that Connolly and Ogilvie's judgment was impaired by alcohol. The 2 agents displayed poor judgment and a lack of situational awareness in driving into the scene. While during their interviews each denied drinking to excess, we we must assess those denials in light of the Uniform Division officers' observations of the agent's behavior, the fact that they had just spent the 5 previous hours in a restaurant bar, and that 2 highly experienced supervisors drove into a crime scene inches from what the rest of the Secret Service was treating as a potential explosive device in which, under different circumstances, could have endangered their own lives and those of the Uniform Division officers who responded. Moreover, both agents were required to report their conduct up the chain of command, but failed to do so. Each told us that they did not believe that what they had done amounted to a reportable incident. Their failure to report reflects either poor judgment on their part or an affirmative desire to hide their conduct. With regard to the actions of the Uniform Division that evening, we found that they reacted to the suspicious package generally in accordance with Secret Service policy and operational procedures. However, the establishment of the perimeter should have been better executed. While there is often confusion inherent in a fast-moving and factually fluid situation, a number of vehicles and pedestrians came within close proximity to the object after the Uniform Division had established the safety perimeter. The Uniform Division officers made reasonable attempts while they were securing the scene to canvass the area for the suspect, but an early partial description of the suspect's vehicle foiled the ability to apprehend the suspect during her flight. However, the Secret Service investigative agents reacted quickly to identify the suspect and determine the nature of the threat. It was the watch commander's sole decision to allow Connolly and Ogilvy to pass without further inquiry as to their sobriety. The watch commander made this decision on his own assessment based on his observations. While it would have been far preferable if he had ordered a field sobriety test or made other inquiries to establish both agents' fitness to drive, the watch commander's actions must be considered in light of the vast disparity in rank between the watch commander and Connolly, who was in the watch commander's chain of command, the vague and insufficient Secret Service policy regarding drinking alcohol and driving government vehicles, and the Secret Service reputation for punishing or ignoring those who would further investigate or report such violations. The watch commander reported the facts as he understood them to his superior officer. The watch commander and his subordinates should have been able to rely on their superior officers to appropriately report the situation. Both Uniform Division Deputy Chief Dyson and Uniform Division Chief Simpson were notified that night that the 2 agents had driven into an evacuated area and that alcohol was involved, and each could have reported the incident, but did not. I would like to publicly acknowledge the hard work of the agents of the Office of Inspector General who conducted this investigation. They displayed a dedication to the OIG mission and professionalism that does me proud, and I am grateful for their efforts. Additionally, I would like to express my appreciation for the outstanding cooperation we received from the Secret Service's Office of Professional Responsibility and from Director Clancy himself. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Roth, there was an email about the incident forwarded up the chain of command on March 4th. Can you tell me a little bit more about that email, what you found?
Certainly. What we had found was that, and let me get to the page in the report that has that.
At least the version I have is page 15.
Thank you, sir. Correct. There was a email that was sent really up the chain of command all the way to the SAC of the Presidential Protection Division that described in sort of very vague terms what had occurred at the entrance of the East Street.
And why do you think the email was forwarded by Deputy Chief Dyson to Mr. Connolly himself?
I think it was to let Mr. Connolly know that, in fact, word was getting out of the incident and that he had the necessity to self-report.
And how did Mr. Connolly respond to that email?
During that night when Mr. Connolly was driving home, he called Deputy Chief Dyson and expressed his concerns with regard to the fact that this was getting out.
So if Deputy Chief Dyson denied that he was aware that the email was about the vehicle containing Mr. Conley, would you find that denial credible?
Not knowing any other facts, it certainly would raise some additional questions I'd have to ask Deputy Chief Dyson. The evidence that we have derived indicates that Mr. Connolly and Deputy Chief Dyson had a conversation as Connolly was driving home, expressing concerns about that email itself.
So for him to suggest that he had no idea that Conley was in the car, that couldn't possibly be true, could it?
Our interview of Deputy Chief Dyson, I believe he indicated that it sounded like Connolly was in the car as they were having that discussion.
Did your investigators ask any questions about the video cameras being directed away from the area where Braun was questioning Conley and Ogilvy? That was something that our whistleblowers and their concerns that the video cameras were actually moved away so that they could not see that interaction.
I was not aware of any of that. What we did find with regard to the video preservation was, as you know, there's only a 72-hour preservation of the video unless it is somehow burned to a removable media. What we found in the course of our investigation was the actual, what I would call the barrel incident, Ogilvy driving and striking the barrel and moving the barrel out of the way was in fact burned onto removable media at the request of the uniform division folks who were on the scene and who wanted to figure out exactly how it was that that barrel was moved. We, of course, had no other video, so there was nothing else to review other than that snippet that had gotten burned that.
And that's one of our deep concerns long term is just that, why the policy, when you require an airport to retain video for 30 days, and yet they only retain this for hours. There were a couple different potential crimes going on. You did have two people that were trying to detain this woman from driving away. They claimed to be injured and assaulted. That video is not necessarily all captured from start to finish. The bungling of how we were going to apprehend this person who had left a potential bomb. Let me ask you, were there any officers in the JOC that night who outranked Braun? Do you know?
That outranked Braun?
Yeah.
There was a assistant to the SAC, I think in the Presidential Protection Division, who was there. So in other words, an investigative agent, I think in a GS-14 level. I'm assuming that outranks Braun, but I'm not 100% sure.
One of the concerns is about when the Director Clancy knew. You know, this thing was evidently spreading like wildfire. There's emails, there's telephone discussions. There are people who are asking to have videotape preserved because they were upset and irate about what was going on. You had former agents, you had retired agents, you had a newspaper reporter, you had members of Congress, all heard about this before Director Clancy. Is that possible?
Apparently that's what the facts show.
So who's responsible? Where did it stop? Where did it not continue up the chain of command so that Director Clancy knew about it?
Well, I think there are several points of failure. I mean, certainly one of the points of failure is with Connolly and Ogilvy, who had, according to Secret Service policy, a duty to report their own misconduct up the chain. So the SAC of the Presidential Protection Division, in fact, should have been informed by Connolly, and the SAC of the Washington Field Office should have been informed by Ogilvy, but were not. So that's one point of failure. I think the other point of failure is with the supervisors, the leadership in the uniform division. Both the chief and the deputy chief could have and should have reported it up. Each of them, when we interviewed them, said, well, the reason that we didn't do it is because Connolly told us that he was going to self-report, so I didn't want to do it. I'd rather have Connolly do it. The difficulty...
Shouldn't have both, but technically both should have happened, right? They should have self-reported and they should have reported it. They knew that misconduct had happened.
Correct.
So why didn't they do it?
Well, I think it was a failure on those individuals' parts to do what it is that they were supposed to do.
Anybody else should have reported?
Those are the four individuals that I believed had primary responsibility. Obviously, there were individuals, for example, in the JOC, the Joint Operations Center, who understood what went on. including the 1811, the special agent supervisor who was at the JOC that evening, who could have reported it up, probably should have reported it up. There are the Uniform Division individuals themselves who could have reported it as well.
And my concern is that they did not preserve all the video that was germane to both the leaving of the package, the fleeing of the person, and the incident itself. With that, I yield back and now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cummings.
Picking up exactly where the chairman left off, Mr. Roth, I noticed that at the beginning of your report, you mentioned that you're deferring specific conclusions about potential systemic issues facing the Secret Service until you have completed your investigation into at least 5 or 6 other incidents. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what form do you think that's going to take? I mean, in other words, you're going to see, it seems like we have a culture of secrecy, a culture of complacency, a culture of fear of retaliation. I mean, what do you see, where are you going with that?
Sure.
You follow me?
Yes, I do. And the way I see our office is where we add value is having that independent fact-finding ability to be able to go in and gather documents and interview individuals who are, in fact, compelled under DHS rules to talk to us. So what we intend to do is very similar to what we did with the Bush residence alarm report that was issued a few weeks ago. We're going to find a lot of facts, and we're going to see exactly what it is that we find. We are going to use the disinfectant of sunlight. We are going to publish reports. We are going to report them both to the Secretary, to the Director of the Secret Service, and obviously the committees to whom we report. We think that at the end of those fact findings, some of the conclusions or some of the sort of themes will become apparent. But, for example, we are in the process of doing an investigation into the 24 incident at the CDC where the president was in close proximity to an armed security guard, unknowns to the Secret Service. We will write a factual report about exactly what happened, where there were the points of failure within that, and publish that, again, to this committee as well as the other committees of jurisdiction, to the Secretary and to the Director.
So it sounds similar to when a DOJ comes into a police department and is looking at patterns of practice. I mean, is that similar, you think?
I think that's a pretty good analogy. The only difference is that we're going to do this serially. In other words, we're not going to wait until the end. We are going to produce these because we think it's important to get the information out as quickly as we possibly can.
Now, I want to ask you about the agency's policies regarding alcohol, which your report calls, and I quote, vague and insufficient.
Correct.
First, let me quickly walk through some details about the retirement party. According to your report, the party started at about 5:30 and lasted until 7:30. Your report says there was an open bar. Afterwards, Mr. Connolly and Mr. Ogilvie stayed at the bar with 2 other colleagues, and according to your report, Mr. Ogilvie opened a new bar tab at 7:44 p.m. and closed it 3 hours later. Is that right?
That's correct.
As part of your investigation, you obtained the actual bar tab, did you not?
We did.
And I would like to put it up on the screen. Your report says they purchased, and I quote, 8 glasses of scotch, 2 vodka drinks, 1 glass of wine, and 3 glasses of beer. End of quote. They want to roll. Looking at this tab, the first 3 items are beers, then a glass of wine, then 8 Johnny Walker Reds, and then 2 vodka drinks. So 14 alcoholic drinks in all. Is that right?
That's correct.
The agents claim that they did not have all of these drinks. Mr. Ogilvie told your investigators that 5 glasses of scotch, the glass of wine, and the 3 beers were, and I quote, given away to others, end of quote, but he could not remember to whom. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but at a minimum, Mr. Ogilvie admitted to drinking 2 scotches and 1 beer. Mr. Connolly admitted to drinking 2 beers, and both Mr. Connolly and Mr. Ogilvie also admitted that they drove their government vehicles that same evening on their way home. Is that right?
That's correct.
As of March 4th, the Secret Service has had a policy that prohibited officers from operating government vehicles, and I quote, while under the influence of intoxicants. But your report says that this policy applied only to uniformed division officers, not to agents like Mr. Connolly or Mr. Ogilvy. This seems a bit ridiculous to me, but do you know why that was the case?
We don't. And what we found with a lot of these policies is they were put in sort of a piecemeal and patchwork fashion. But we don't have a good explanation as to why it only applied to the uniform division, but not to the special agents.
Now, the Secret Service is also part of the Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security, which has its own policy prohibiting all employees from drinking alcohol within 8 hours of operating a government vehicle. So even if we take the agents at their word in terms of how much they drank that night, it seems they violated the existing DHS policy. But your report says that you found, and I quote, no evidence that anyone in the Secret Service was aware of this policy. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's a problem.
Yes.
And I don't see how we can have the elite of the elite, and they don't even know what their own rules are. After the incident on March 4th, the Secret Service issued a new rule prohibiting all employees from drinking any alcohol within 10 hours of driving a government vehicle. So this new rule is even more strict than the DHS policy. Is that right?
That's correct.
Do you know if the Secret Service is taking steps to educate their employees about this new policy, and are they conducting training in that regard?
We did not look at that in this investigation, but that is something that we're certainly interested
Well,
in.
I'm sure that's something that this committee will take up. My last thing, just Mr. Roth, there are clearly significant problems relating to alcohol at the agency. We've seen that in the past incidents as well, but it also appears that the agency's vague policies just made worse the problem. So I hope today's hearing is part of a broader effort to reform the agency's policies to make absolutely clear to employees what is expected of them and to revitalize the agency so it can perform its critical mission and once again become the elite of the elite. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, just as a matter of personal privilege,
Yes.
Mr. Connolly is not related to me, nor do I like scotch. Thank you.
Duly noted. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. DeSantis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Roth, in your report, you said that the findings should be considered in light, or the incident should be considered in light of the Secret Service's reputation for punishing or ignoring those who would further investigate or report such violation. And that interests me because before your tenure, the DHS Office of Inspector General released a 2013 report which did not find evidence in the Secret Service that misconduct or inappropriate behavior is widespread or that leadership has fostered an environment that tolerates inappropriate conduct. So given your tenure giving this report, what are your thoughts about the 2013 DHS report? Is that an accurate reflection of what's going on in the culture of the Secret Service right now?
Certainly not right now. It is not. I mean, but one of the things about the report that you referenced, the 2013 report, is that there are fascinating findings within it. For example, they did a survey, an electronic survey, in which 138 electronic survey respondents personally observed excessive alcohol consumption, and 86% of them indicated that they did not report such behavior. The report also indicated that of the 2,500 and some electronic survey respondents, 44% of them felt that they could not report misconduct without fear of retaliation if they, in fact, reported that. So within that report itself, there are some very, very disturbing trends, and I think given the nature of what it is that we've seen since then, I believe that there is a serious problem within the Secret Service.
And that report also found that 36% of the respondents did not believe that senior managers are held accountable within the agency. Do you think that that is still the case today?
We haven't done any work on that, but it would not surprise me if it is still that case.
Do you think, is there any indication that the process for discipline within the Secret Service has improved since the 2013 report?
Well, it certainly has improved since Cartagena. The Secret Service has taken steps they have an Office of Integrity now, for example, that is the one that imposes discipline. As a result of our 2013 inspection, we made a number of different recommendations, including a table of penalties, which they now have adopted. So I think the Secret Service is moving in the right direction in this area after Cartagena.
It's safe to say, though, that the conclusions reached in the 2013 report, that there's a conflict between the conclusions you reached in your report.
I would agree with that.
So the question is then how to correct what has led to the cultural problems that your report identifies. And then I agree with you that I think underlying the 2013 report, you saw evidence of that from the people who responded to the survey. So as people who are doing oversight, I mean, what do we need to be doing, or what does the agency need to be doing in your judgment?
Well, candidly, I think Director Clancy is moving in the right direction. As I said, they've indicated they've put together a table of penalties. They have an Office of Integrity. I think they're doing increasing training on this. I think they've treated violations of this very seriously. For example, the auto accident in Florida involving some of the uniform division that was alcohol-related. I think the discipline that was imposed there was appropriate. So I won't expect that a problem that took years to create will be fixed overnight, but I do think they are moving in the right direction.
Amongst your experience with the other components of DHS, do they all have similar issues with alcohol, or is the Secret Service unique in that regard?
You know, we haven't taken a specific look at other law enforcement agencies to the degree that we have with the Secret Service.
But you have not had a lot of alcohol-related incidences brought to your attention that you've had to investigate. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Do any of the other DHS components have a similar reputation where somebody who was trying to do the right thing could end up getting punished or marginalized?
Again, we haven't looked at that, so it's very difficult for me to opine on that.
But you can say that that is not a problem that's been presented to you in the other components up during your tenure, correct?
That's correct. It hasn't been brought to my attention that that's the case.
Great. Well, let me thank you for the report. I thought it was done timely, and I think it had a lot of good information in it, so thanks for doing that. And obviously, we want to see with some of the other incidents, we're looking forward to those results as well. So thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. And now recognize Ms. Norton from the District of Columbia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this hearing. You've been pretty busy, Mr. Chairman, today. And Mr. Roth, we appreciate your report. And you, of course, see some congressional impatience. That impatience, I suppose this committee is paid to be impatient. Particularly, though, in light of the repetitive incidents. So I'm trying to be as objective as I can. And to put this in perspective, I can do that because I ran an agency that was a whole lot more troubled at the time than the Secret Service. A huge backlog and the rest, and if someone had said to me, you know, within a couple of months, get it in order, I would have been in bad shape. It took me a little time to get rid of that backlog. So I'm trying to keep in mind what it is Mr. Clancy found and what he perhaps has done. Now, I note that I asked staff to find out, you know, when was he appointed exactly. He has actually a long-term employee of the Secret Service. He was acting from October. The March 4th incident occurred when I consider his acting time, but he was official as of February 19th. Now, as of the March 4th incident, Director Clancy apparently had not issued the order that was issued after that incident involving the two agents, required to report through their chain of command any activities, et cetera. Now, my concern with that is whether or not this indicates, it seems to me that in light of his having been with the agency, for example, even during the time when there was no reporting of the bullets that had penetrated the White House, I was concerned that the first thing he did was not to say, look, let me know before the press knows and before anybody knows. And it it bothered me that as short a time as that may seem, that he certainly was aware. So my question goes to whether or not, in light of this order after the March 4th incident, you believe there is sufficient clarity so that one seemed pretty clear as to what is required. For example, I don't know, and do agents know, about drinking off duty. Does there need to be greater clarification beyond reporting now up the chain of command of what is required of an agent on and off duty? These agents have been under huge duress, according to the special panel. To quote them, for years the service has taken on additional missions in both protective and investigative roles, but it has not matched its request, for additional resources of those expended. And they reported that they had been on 12-hour days and with fewer and fewer days off. So again, if you step back and look at it, they had obviously been subject to the sequester and the rest of it. And the panel said that they needed at best 200 officers and 85 agents, and that they were down 500. So essentially you have some overworked, overburdened agents. So you would imagine that if people, even that high in command, had been in the chain of command, had been overworked that way, that they might go out and drink too much. So is there any clarification if you're an officer of something like the Secret Service and you are off duty, but subject perhaps to being called on doing, but bearing in mind that everybody's entitled to a private life? Is there enough clarification about what is required on and off duty so that we can be assured that there will not be another incident like this?
I think you raise a good point and a good concern, and it's certainly one that we wrestled with regard to what does it mean to be on duty, because most of these special agents are subject to recall at any time. Does that mean they can never consume alcohol? It would seem to be an irrational policy if that's the case. But I agree that there probably is room for clarification with regard to that.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I would ask that, because I think this is a very murky area, that we ask Director Clancy to bring some clarification. For example, certain number of hours, perhaps before being required to report for duty, et cetera. I have no idea, but some clarification might be fair in light of what they should expect.
I wholeheartedly agree, because what you see at Homeland Security issued by Secretary Johnson is different than what the individual agencies within his department have in front of them. And there should be a uniform standard across the board, and there's not. And I think that is one of the fixes that we need to work with the agency.
Or maybe even a higher standard for a Secret Service agent.
Amen. All right, let's now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Walker, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just sort of pick up what we were just discussing when it comes to off-duty, on-duty in the aspect of driving government vehicles. So the question I'd like to start with is, did you determine whether any other attendees, Mr. Roth, at the party drove government-owned vehicles after consuming the alcohol?
We did not. We interviewed some of the individuals who were at the sort of farewell party in which alcohol was served. Some of them had alcohol and then, for example, went back to the office to continue to work. But we did not really press it. And my point with regard to that is that the DHS policy was really unknown to the Secret Service. No one within the Secret Service understood it. We did not see any attempts by the department itself to promote this policy. The policy was in the manual for sort of essentially maintenance of cars, government cars. It was not a place in which you would naturally look to see a policy like that. So it was difficult for us to blame somebody for violating a policy that, one, they didn't know about, and two, no one made an effort to tell them about.
Granted, and I understand being ignorant of certain aspects and ethics and so forth as we continue to learn, even as a new member of Congress. However, let me ask this: were any of the party attendees of the Secret Service part of the executive staff? And if so, should not they be held some kind of liable to understand what the rules are?
Yes, I agree with that. Subsequent to this, of course, has been noted, the Secret Service put a new policy in place, a very bright line policy in place that says you cannot step into or operate a government vehicle if in the last 10 hours you've had any alcohol whatsoever. So certainly the behavior that took place at the party is now prohibited. So
And there's no ambiguity in, I mean, you I guess, proved the fact that they did know of at least that policy part of it. Is that correct? I mean, most Secret Service agents, if you've been drinking, probably not a good idea to get back into your government-owned vehicle.
Well, what we found was that there was a lot of uncertainty as to what the policy was. It was to not drive drunk, obviously, but the question of when you're impaired, in other words, is it okay to have a drink and then drive? And I think at a previous hearing, Director Clancy, in fact, talked about that. If you're not able to control your actions, it's not a legal limit, but it could be something less. You may not be intoxicated by a legal limit, but some could say that you don't have the proper abilities. So some sort of impairment, but that was such a vague sort of standard that it's functionally unenforceable.
It is, but you did mention, I believe, just a second ago, that some Secret Service employees return to work after consuming the alcoholic beverages. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and what has been done, or what has been said, what has been reprimanded? Give me a little bit of background on what happened after that was found out.
Sure. I mean, our policy is that we find the facts and conduct the investigation, and then we give everything that we have to the Secret Service, because we're not in the discipline business.
I understand that you're just fact-finding. Are you aware of anything that's been done to those employees who were drinking and then came back to work?
No, we have transmitted our information last week, so we haven't heard anything back. I mean, typically we won't, by the way.
And we've talked a little bit about the culture of the Secret Service. And I appreciate some of the words that you've talked about as far as you feel like there's been a little bit of improvement or change, or a 30,000-foot expectation of raising the bar a little bit. But this kind of contradicts that mindset that there's still that frat party mentality, that what applies to everybody else doesn't apply to us. I don't want to speculate or create some kind of hypothesis here, but is that a fair statement, that there are still things, work that need to be done inside the Secret Service to get the bar raised?
Yes, I share your concern with exactly that. We don't know the degree of the problem, but it certainly seems like there's some issues here.
Well, I will tell you this on a personal note, Mr. Roth. I've seen you here, as well as my other committee on Homeland Security. You always do exemplary work, and I appreciate it. I think the American appreciate your thoroughness. Thank you very much. With that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now recognize Mr. Clay of Missouri for 5 minutes.
Chairman, Mr. Roth, I want to ask about an email exchange that your investigators obtained between the two agents who had been drinking in the bar, Mr. Connolly and Mr. Ogilvy. First, let me walk through some facts. The incident happened on the night of March 4th. Your report found that Mr. Connolly and Mr. Ogilvy should have reported this incident, but neither did so. Is that right?
That's correct.
Based on their failure to report, it seems like they were hoping this whole thing would just blow over. 2 days later, on March 6th, Mr. Connolly had his chance to come clean. He had a meeting with his superior, the special agent in charge, Robert Buster. But according to your report, he never mentioned anything involving this incident. Your report says this, and I quote, Connolly met with his supervisor, SAIC Buster, on March the 6th and discussed the UD officer's handling of the confrontation with the suspect in the suspicious package incident. Connolly did not mention the incident involving him and Ogilvy. So at this meeting on March 6th, Mr. Connolly basically decided that he would just keep his mouth shut and not tell his supervisor what happened. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he also would have learned at that meeting that nobody else had reported the incident either. And so here's what I want to ask you about. The very next day, on March 7th, Mr. Ogilvy and Mr. Connolly had an email exchange. I'd like to put it up on the screen. Can we, there we go. Okay, okay, Mr. Ogilvy, as this is an email exchange, Mr. Ogilvy at 8:24 said, all good. Mr. Connolly at 8:30, muy bueno. And then at 8:50, you are, from Mr. Ogilvy, you are an angel. Mr. Roth, I don't know what was in their heads, but certainly one interpretation of this exchange is that Mr. Ogilvy was asking, hey, are we going to get in trouble for this, or are we all good? Then Mr. Connolly, who just met with his boss the day before and determined that nobody else had reported the incident, assured him that everything would be fine. Mr. Roth, your investigators interviewed Mr. Ogilvy. According to their interview notes, Mr. Ogilvy admitted that the context of this email was to check in with Mr. Connolly about the March 4th incident. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
In contrast, Mr. Connolly told you investigators that this email had nothing to do with the March 4th incident. He claimed that he had no idea what this email was about, no clue, he told you investigators, and I quote, he did not know what the intent was behind it. It was open-ended, and he did not know if it was in reference to March 4th or the busy day that he was having. Mr. Roth, I have one last question for you. Do you buy that?
No, I don't. I believe that this was communication between the two to make sure or see whether or not the word had leaked out with regard to the incident that had happened 2 days prior.
What usually happens when a witness like that is being so dishonest? Are there any follow-up to a person's dishonesty? I guess this was a deposition or just a questioning.
It was an interview that took place as part of an investigation that we were doing. He has the obligation, obviously, to tell the truth, and I think there are penalties as a result of not telling the truth.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your responses, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Now recognize Mr. Heiss of Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've already stated, Mr. Roth, that it was a failure on the part of Dyson and Simpson not to report the incident, and their excuse was that they thought this would be self-reported. Do you believe that allowing individuals to self-report is acceptable?
No, I do not. I think particularly in the supervisory chain, that they had an independent duty to report this either to me or to the Secret Service Office of Professional Responsibility or up the chain. I would note that the Uniform Division Chief said he didn't think it was his job to report misconduct that happened by special agents.
So is this a policy problem or a communication problem?
I think this is a communication problem.
So what's the policy say?
The policy says that individuals have a responsibility to report suspicions of violation of law or regulation, either to the Inspector General or, for example, here to the Office of Professional Responsibility.
Does the policy state that individuals must self-report?
There's a Secret Service policy that requires individuals to self-report, yes.
Okay, but you don't believe that that is effective?
Well, I think it's effective if you have the integrity to do so. Obviously, if
all right, but you just said that it's not an acceptable practice, and yet it's policy. So can we expect that policy to change?
I think that's a question that you should direct to the Secret Service.
Do you believe that Dyson and Simpson should be punished?
We are not in the business of determining what the appropriate punishment should be.
I'm asking, do you believe they should be?
I think their behavior was troubling. And
Do you believe they should be punished?
I think there ought to be consequences for these kinds of actions, yes.
All right. Do you believe that any personnel, be it with DHS or Secret Service or whatever, should be able to retire in order to avoid punishment for misconduct?
Again, that gets into areas of personnel law that I'm simply.
But I'm
not
asking your
familiar.
opinion.
Well, personally, I've been in the government for 29 years. I have a pension. It's vested. That is my property. I would like to think I can rely on that.
But in order to avoid punishment for misconduct, we're seeing an awful lot of this these days, and it's quite disgusting to me personally and to a lot of people that I talk to. It's a way of dodging consequences for personal behavior. It enables people to behave any way they want to, and when they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, they just retire and there's no consequences. And you believe that's okay?
I certainly understand the frustration with this. I mean, the maximum consequence that could be faced here would be termination from the service, you know, leaving the service, which is functionally what retirement will do.
Without punishment, though, for misconduct. Somewhere along the way, we've got to deal with the problem of misconduct. And at this point, there seems to be nothing. And if anyone's caught, they just retire, and there's no consequences. And that's an entirely unacceptable policy when all is said and done. At some point, misconduct has to be dealt with because we are seeing, it seems like on a regular basis, Secret Service high-profile cases of misconduct. And there is a root cause somewhere for this culture that allows for misconduct. What do you believe the root cause is?
I think it is a lack of accountability.
Okay, so how do we correct it?
Well, again, I think what the Secret Service has done, and again, this is probably a better address to the Secret Service, is institute a series of reforms, for example, a table of penalties, a more uniform way of administering discipline, better communication, those kinds of things.
There's actually a reputation, and I know you know this from the report, that there's punishment for those who report
Correct.
Misconduct. Have you ever considered rewarding people for reporting misconduct?
Financially?
In any way? I mean, would that help bring accountability?
I think that's something that's worthy of some discussion. Certainly one of the things that we try to do, for example, what I did when I came on board is I sent an email to all 7,000 email addresses in the Secret Service indicating that we were interested in finding sort of misconduct, waste, fraud within the Secret Service, reminding them of the protections that they have within sort of the Whistleblower Protection Act as well as the Inspector General's Act. You know, as a result of that, we have gotten some work, some reports. The report on the Bush residence that had an alarm that had been out for 13 months was as a result of a whistleblower. Somebody came forward and said, look, this is an unacceptable thing. You should see what's happened here. And we were able to investigate it. We were able to write a report. We brought it to light, and we fixed the problem. So what I'm hopeful of is that as we move down the road, people will understand that, in fact, they do have some redress, that reporting something up the chain won't simply be ignored, but they'll actually fix the problem. But it's going to take some time.
Thank the gentleman.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Roth, for your good work here. You did a bang-up job on this investigation. You got to the bottom of it, and we appreciate it. I want to talk to you a bit about the videotape procedure there at the White House. Now, we had a chance, a bunch of the members, Chairman Chaffetz and I, and the ranking member, Mr. Cummings, went over to the command post for the Secret Service, and they have a full spectrum situation there where they have maybe a dozen different cameras from different angles, and they've got a pretty good view of the White House. The problem is that in this case, let's just take this case with, the most recent incident where the woman got out of the car and left the bomb in the driveway. That tape was only retained, I think, for 72 hours, and they did not tell Director Clancy for 5 days. So by the time they told him about what had happened, most of the tapes had already been destroyed. Well, they hadn't been destroyed, they'd been taped over. They retape over. That's every 72 hours. We also had an incident back in November of 2011 where you had an individual, I believe his name was Oscar Ortega Hernandez, who took a semi-automatic rifle and shot up the White House, and yet the Secret Service completely missed it. Capitol Police missed it. A housekeeper happened to find some shell fragments and then reported it. Then the FBI did an investigation. But meanwhile, those tapes were destroyed. Those tapes were destroyed, and but for the fact that this fellow, after he left, had a car accident down by the 14th Street Bridge, we would not have known about that. We would not have, been able to connect that incident to the shots fired at the White House. So what I'm getting at is the airports, everybody uses a 30-day cycle on these tapes. The technology today allows us to do that. And I know you had some inquiry into the reasons why they collapsed that time. Why would the Secret Service want to tape over the tapes when we've had these repeated incidents where a longer preservation of those tapes, say for 30 days, would help us to make the White House more secure? The second example I gave, the President's mother-in-law and his two daughters were in Washington at the time. One of the daughters was home. We're talking about pretty severe consequences here, and we're sort of whistling through the graveyard here and allowing this practice to go on. So what I'd like to try to do is to change the protocol, the security protocol at the White House, to start doing things in a way that makes the president and his family safer. Because obviously you got people jumping over the fence, running through the White House, you got helicopters landing and drones, you got people shooting up the White House. I'm starting to lose faith. I'm starting to lose faith in the Secret Service. I really am. And the level of seriousness that we have in protecting our president and his family. This is pretty basic stuff. So after having inquired about the taping practices at the White House, can you tell me if you have any recommendations that they might adopt to accomplish our goal here of protecting the president?
What we found was actually even worse than what you described, because for the longest time it was only a 24-hour retention policy, and they only changed that after the incident in which there were these functionally gate crashers at the state dinner in 2011. Then they moved it to 72 hours. The system, as I'm sure you know, is a combination of digital and analog. It was stood up in 2007, and really, in some ways, this is very similar to what we saw in the Bush residence, where they had installed an alarm system after, this is the senior Bush, left office, and they never replaced it. So it was a 20-year-old alarm system that was protecting, a former president. They didn't have a system in place to be able to update these kinds of things. There was not, for example, even like a ticket system where if you needed something repaired, there would be a record that, in fact, you requested these kinds of repairs. So a lot of their fundamental business practices simply have not kept up with the 21st century. I think the good news is that with regard to the White House video system, that there are updates that are going to occur in the near future.
Okay, any timeline on that?
I do. I'm not sure that's public information.
Oh, okay, okay, fair enough. All right, I'll yield back to the gentleman.
Thank the gentleman. We're getting close to a vote series. We want to keep hustling here. So we're going to recognize Mr. Heiss of Georgia for 5 minutes. Mr. Carter. My bad. Mr. Carter for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Roth, thank you for being here. I want to get at something that has bothered me throughout these series of hearings that we've had on this, and it seems to be the culture, if you will, of the Secret Service about reporting. We've been told, and it's been alleged, that the watch commander actually said that he did not want to report this. He didn't want to ask for a field sobriety test because it would have been a career killer. Is that true?
That is what one of the uniform division officers told us, yes, that the watch commander said. The watch commander subsequently denied that.
Well, when he says a career killer, what is he referring to? His career for reporting it, or is he referring to their career if they had been found guilty? I'm not sure.
The sense we got was that that was one of the motivations for the watch commander not to do any further inquiries, because he thought there may be retaliation against him. In other words, it would be a career killer for him. Certainly consistent to some of the things that we found in the 2013 report with regard to a high percentage of people, failing to report misconduct, believing that either nobody would listen or you'd in fact be affirmatively retaliated against.
Well, tell me what the policy is. What is the policy of the Secret Service when someone does recognize this, or when someone is faced with this situation? You're required to report, or is it you better just keep it quiet?
Well, it's certainly not the latter, and it is, in fact, it's a DHS policy. It's DHS-wide that they're required to report it to either the Secret Service Office of Professional Responsibility or to the Inspector General.
And if you don't report it, what is the punishment?
I'm not aware at this point what that is.
I mean, it would appear to me that's an important component.
Correct. Correct. As I said, the Inspector General's office isn't involved in specific discipline cases. That's the Secret Service's responsibility. So what we do is we engage in this fact-finding and then hand it over to the Secret Service to do exactly what you suggest.
Okay. I'm still a little disappointed, not in you, but just in that it would appear to me that would be cut and dry.
Sure.
Okay. Let me ask you about the two agents who were involved. When they arrived at that White House complex, the officers who stopped them asked them, where are you coming from?
Right.
And their answer was?
Secret Service headquarters.
And that turns out to be a blatant lie.
That is not, in fact, true. Correct.
Okay, then what's the consequences of that? I mean, look, we teach our children there are consequences to actions. This was an action. What is the consequence?
Sure. There is a Secret Service table of penalties that talks about the range of consequences for specific things, and I can go through the specific ones with regard to,
no,
for example,
and I appreciate that, and I understand what you're trying to do, but let me ask you this. What is going to happen to them?
There is a process that's in place that the Office of Integrity for Secret Service runs, which is the deputy of the Office of Integrity will write up, I assume, take a look at our report and the supporting materials that we have produced and determine whether or not discipline is warranted. If he does, he will write up what's functionally a charging letter and give that to the individuals who are involved here, Connolly and Ogilvie. They have due process rights under the law. They have the ability to appeal it to the integrity officer, as well as, if the consequences are severe enough, to the Merit Systems Protection.
Within those written laws, is one of the options to go ahead and retire?
I'm not sure. I mean, certainly you can only discipline people who are federal employees. If somebody leaves the federal service, then there's no discipline to impose, because the most discipline you can impose is to throw them out of the federal service.
Does it go on their permanent record?
Yes, it would.
Is that shared with a prospective employer in the future? I mean, if one of them goes to get in the private sector, do you tell them, okay, this is what happened?
Yeah, I'm not 100%.
Or you just tell them, no, they were employed here from this day to this day?
Right. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I think in the instance of these two individuals, I think a Google search is going to take care of that, but I don't actually
obviously in this, but.
Right. But I'm not sure. That's an area of employment law that I just don't have.
Okay, well, I understand. But my point is that the concern that I have is just with the general culture that exists in the Secret Service at this time.
I certainly share that concern.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Glad to see Mr. Carter coming in under time. Appreciate it. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Cartwright, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Chaffetz, I want to thank you particularly for mentioning the valor that is routinely shown by agents of this Secret Service. In particular, and especially a young man that you mentioned from Scranton, Pennsylvania, in my district. Today, the U.S. Secret Service is proud to note that its own Sergeant Technician William Ewer from Scranton was presented by DHS Secretary Jay Johnson the Secretary's Award for Valor, which is awarded for displays of exceptional courage. Of course, as the chairman mentioned, young Mr. Ewer actually pulled an accident victim from the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, an accident, pulled the victim from a burning vehicle, and it was later determined that that victim would have been unable to extricate himself without William Ewer's help. So we're exceptionally proud of William Ewer in Pennsylvania today. We're also proud of him for coming in 30th in the Scranton Half Marathon last month, covering 13.1 miles in less than an hour and a half. I wish I could do that. Mr. Roth, we're here to talk about failures of the Secret Service, though, and it's a dour duty that you have to talk about some of the downsides of things that we've seen in the Secret Service. Your report concludes, and I quote, both Connolly and Ogilvie had a duty to report the incident to their superiors, but did not do so. Is there a policy requiring them to self-report incidents of this nature?
Yes, there is.
And can you explain the policy?
Sure. And I'm simply reading from the manual that the Secret Service has, and it says, any incident in which an employee of the Secret Service is involved, which may be the cause of publicity or inquiry from others, must be immediately reported to the employee's supervisor. The range of incidents which might occur is so great it is not possible to enumerate them. Each employee must judge when, in his or her opinion, the matter may or could be given publicity in the newspaper or other media, or may be the subject of inquiry. And it goes on, but that gives the gist.
All right. Well, now you found that other officials within the agency knew about the incident and failed to alert senior leadership. In particular, you found, and I quote, both Uniform Division Deputy Chief Dyson and Uniform Division Chief Kevin Simpson were notified that night that 2 agents had been drinking and had driven into an evacuated area, and each could have reported the incident, unquote. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And why didn't they report the incident?
We asked them that question. Their answers were twofold, or at least for Deputy Chief Dyson, it was that he had spoken to Connolly twice, and Connolly had said that he would self-report. Dyson believed that it was better for Connolly to self-report than for him to report. With regard to the chief, he said, one, that he believed Connolly would report, and 2, he said it was not his job to report misconduct on the behalf of agents, but rather just misconduct on behalf of uniform division officers.
Who should Deputy Chief Dyson and Chief Simpson have reported to?
The special agent in charge of the Presidential Protection Division, or the Office of Professional Responsibility, or the Inspector General.
All right. Now, according to your report, Chief Simpson is the most senior Secret Service official who was aware that Mr. Connolly had been drinking when he and Mr. Ogilvie drove into the evacuated area. What was his explanation for Chief Simpson failing to report this information to anyone else?
Again, what he said was he did not report the incident because he did not believe it was his job to do so, and assumed that Connolly was going to self-report.
Well, I don't think there's any acceptable reason for failing to report a clear incident of misconduct of this nature. The Secret Service has to make it clear that reporting misconduct is not optional. Employees are required to report potential misconduct right up the chain of command. Mr. Roth, I thank you for your important work on this matter, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'll now recognize Mr. Meadows of North Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Roth, for your work. Please thank your staff as well. It was timely, quick. I appreciate your frank and direct answers. I especially appreciate that because that's not always the case. And so I want to give credit where credit is due. I do want to follow up a little bit on some of the questions that have been asked with regards to the policy, the alcohol policy that is either known or unknown. And I think your testimony, you said that really most people are not aware of the DHS policy. Is that correct?
At the time, they were not aware. Since this incident, there have been steps
Okay,
to.
because that doesn't seem to jive with what the whistleblowers have told us and the fact that you can find it on your website and maybe you have to look for it a little bit, but I mean, it's pretty, so why would they not know about that? Is it just willful ignorance, or is it the 8th floor not stressing the policy, or why would they not know about that?
You know, it's a matter, I think, of both publicizing it and educating individuals about it. But, for example, we interviewed Ogilvy's direct supervisor who didn't know what the policy was.
Well, let me go a little bit further then, because there is a policy that everyone is aware of, and I believe it's called the 10-hour rule.
Correct.
And so we have this receipt that would indicate that there were a number of people that were drinking and possibly reporting. Would they not have been violating if they reported that 10-hour rule?
We looked at that issue specifically with Ogilvy and Connolly. The bar tab was closed out at 10:47, roughly. They entered the East Street gate slightly before 11 p.m., so they had finished drinking before 11 p.m. Their duty hours started at 9 a.m. the next day, so they made.
But I mean, what about others? Obviously, it was a pretty big party.
Correct. What we found, though, was that, or at least by the preponderance of the evidence, that the 4 individuals who were there were the last to leave.
Okay.
So there wasn't anybody else left.
All right. So it sounds like you've been pretty thorough, but we need to reemphasize that. Let me tell you the reason why I ask is on the way here, I've got 2 calls from random agents that I couldn't name because they're afraid to divulge who they are, but literally within an hour of this hearing, letting me know of all kinds of problems, of the expectation of Secret Service agents to actually put liquor in the rooms of supervisors as they travel, that if they don't do that, it's frowned upon. GS-15s that have been caught inappropriate with females and yet still, you know, leaving ammo or guns behind. I mean, I'm hearing all kinds of things, and if I'm a member of Congress hearing this, are you hearing the same kinds of things, or should we report them to you so that you can investigate? Because it's troubling. We've got this culture of, you know, from the most elite protective service in the world, and yet it seems like I'm getting calls almost daily from different people. That's a problem.
I mean, by all means, you should encourage them to contact us. We're going to take this stuff seriously, as we have with this incident, as we have, for example, with the Bush resident incident, and the other lookbacks that we're doing on these security issues that we're continuing to look at. And I really think that the only way that the culture is going to change is if we can demonstrate, we can prove that, in fact, we are going to take these things seriously and do something.
So I have your commitment here today that you not only are going to take this incident, but you're going to look forward, and if we give you additional things, or if other agents give you a number of other potential things to look at, that you'll take them seriously, and that you're 100% committed to rooting out the problems that we have within the agency. Is that correct? Absolutely. Well, good. I know we're about to have votes, so I'm going to yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. We'll now recognize Ms. Watson Coleman of New Jersey for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Roth. I'm going to ask you a question. The Secret Service division or component is a component of DHS, right?
Correct.
So do you think that it makes better sense that there are department-wide policies regarding such important things as opposed to component-wide policies?
It's not an issue that I've really looked at or thought about. I mean, there is certainly a facial validity to have a uniformity across all of DHS, which there clearly is not right now.
Yeah. We hear that in the other committee that I'm on. According to your memorandum of understanding between the Secret Service and your office, certain categories of misconduct must be referred to you.
Correct.
So did what happened on March the 4th constitute something of that level?
Yes, it did.
And in your estimation, who should have reported it? How many people, what level, what are those titles? This doesn't fall on one person's responsibility, right?
Correct, correct. And the duty to report it to us, the Office of Inspector General, is the Office of Professional Responsibility within Secret Service. So in other words, if they get a complaint that talks about somebody who's a GS-15 or above and other sort of categories of incidents, they have a duty to report it to us. So once they hear of something, they must report it to us, and then we make some decisions as to whether we'll take it or not. Independent of that, of course, is the duty that all DHS employees have of reporting suspicions of wrongdoing.
So I may have missed some of this because some of it is getting a little bit confusing for me. This entity that should have reported to you is professional.
Office of Professional Responsibility. It's the internal affairs group within the Secret Service.
How soon after the March 4th incident did it know of it?
They knew about it on March 9th.
On March 9th. And you were informed of it on?
March 9th.
By them?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Clancy was informed of this on March 9th also?
Correct.
Mr. Clancy did not start an investigation of his own at the same time that you all were going to take this on?
That's correct.
Is that the usual operating procedure where if you're going to do it, the agency is not going to conduct?
Exactly. Only one group can conduct an investigation. Otherwise, you have people tripping all over each other. So once a decision is made, for example, for us to take it, then everybody has to step back and allow us to do our investigation.
So if we were going to focus in on who or what level we believe is the biggest problem here, other than the self-reporting up the chain of command, where would that be?
Sure. I think the point of failure was the senior management within the uniform division who knew of it and did not report it to, for example, Director Clancy or to the Office of Professional Responsibility.
Is that the watch commander?
No, the watch commander reported it up his chain of command, for example, to the deputy chief of the uniform division. Additionally, there was a special agent in the JOC, the Joint Operations Center, who was aware of what went on. She certainly could have and probably had a duty to report that as well.
I'm going to close also because I know that we're running late, but I want to associate myself with something that Mr. Heiss said. I agree with him that you cannot, I don't care how long you work in a public service. It could be 5 years, it could be 15 years or 20 years. But if you are found to have done something that as egregious as we think this is, you ought not be able just to walk away with the benefits that you had associated with being a good public servant. There needs to be some consequences to this. You ought not just be allowed to walk away and say, I retire, because you can. Thank you very much, Mr. Roth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Russell for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Roth, for your tireless investigations and trying to make our Department of Homeland Security better. It is appreciated. There's a lot of discussion back and forth on this incident about vague Secret Service policy regarding drinking, alcohol, and driving. I guess my take on it is a little more simple. Would driving through a marked potential crime scene be acceptable performance off-duty, either sober or inebriated?
Neither, sir.
Would entering the White House complex buzzed or inebriated be considered acceptable off-duty behavior?
No.
The second in command who was involved with this incident, what kind of public confidence does it instill when that occurs that we can protect the President of the United States?
Well, I share your concern, particularly given the fact that he was responsible for all the operations within the White House complex.
What kind of example do you think that sets to the agents and also the seriousness of the duties that ought to be performed, whether on duty or off, knowing that any of them at any moment could be called upon to protect the leader of the free world?
And that's something we wrestled with regard to the fact that special agents are, in fact, subject to recall at a moment's notice. In fact, that's one of the reasons they have government cars that they can drive home at night, is because at any moment they could be called out. To give you a good example of that is the 2 Philadelphia agents who at 2 in the morning had to sort of respond to the home of the woman who had dropped the package. They didn't know that evening that they were going to get that call and have to drive in the pouring rain to this woman's house. So it's very, very troubling.
Well, given that sense of duty and also the arduous selection process to elevate an agent to this level of duty, this is the highest performance level that Secret Service agents can perform. What discipline has Agent Connolly or Agent Ogilvy received, and if none, what charges are pending?
The way the process works is there's an investigation that's done, which is now completed. As of last week, we transmitted all of our materials to the Secret Service, to their Office of Professional Responsibility and their Office of Integrity, which then manages that program. And what happens, as I understand it, is that there would be the deputy within the Office of Integrity who would then assess the materials and basically write a charging document, if that's the right word, proposing certain discipline.
When I was a commander in the military, often on an IG investigation, we would receive recommendations of courses of action. What would you recommend?
Well, they have a table of penalties.
I've read through it. What would you recommend, sir?
Well, I think this is very, very serious conduct. I think the fact that it has caused me to expend all these resources, it has caused the director of the Secret Service to distract himself from his important business to have to testify before here, appropriately so. I think it is very, very detrimental to the effective functioning of the Secret Service.
Well, I think all of America would agree, and should the American public, in light of this, have more confidence or less in our government's ability to protect our president?
Well, I'm hoping that this process will create a situation in which people will have more confidence that we're able to acknowledge our problems and fix our problems. If it doesn't get resolved, then I would say there would be less confidence.
And so we had a similar answer after Cartagena, after drones, after barricades, after. We're talking about the President of the United States. At what point do you see, and what is your estimation? You've been handling investigations a long time. Are they taking this serious, and will they make the necessary changes that the American public demands?
I've had a number of conversations with Director Clancy about this. I think he is committed to doing it. I will have to say that they didn't get into this situation overnight, and they're not going to get out of it overnight. But do I think he's making the right moves? I absolutely do.
Well, I hope so, and I think that the director can exhibit that leadership and even reach down into organizations that are going awry. And my hope is that the director would do that, and also that we would see a shape-up rather quickly, because should we have the president harmed, all of America would not be able to forgive itself. Thank you, sir, for your testimony today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I'm going to now recognize myself for 5 more minutes. You mentioned that there were others that had been drinking that evening that went back to, where did they go? Did they go to the White House, or did they go to the Operations Center?
I think they would have gone back to Secret Service headquarters, but I'm not 100% sure, as I sit here, exactly who that would have been. But I do recall in some of the interviews the fact that what happened is they'd have a beer and a sandwich, say goodbye, and then go back to work.
But this incident of this night that we're talking about, some of the people, in addition to Ogilvy and Conley, went back to work, correct?
That's my understanding.
How many people, do you know?
I don't have that information.
And that's the concern. This isn't just one person make a rookie mistake. You have 2 people here, Mr. Conley with 27 years of experience, Mr. Ogilvy with 19 years of experience, some 46 years of experience. Are you telling me that they didn't know that it's wrong to drink? Look, it's not right to drink alcohol and work the French fry machine at McDonald's. And it's certainly not right to drink and go into the White House or the White House compound or drive a vehicle when you're there to protect the president and the first family. These people have guns. They have trust. They have people that they they can blow past and say, look, I'm your supervisor, you're letting me through. And that's what's happening here. And then when you did have that poor officer, you got officers there that are trying to do the right thing, and it is your testimony that these very senior people with badges, guns, and alcohol in their breath told them, oh, I just came from headquarters. They didn't mention that they had come from the bar, did they?
No.
Was that a lie?
It would appear to be that way, yes.
So it is a lie.
Yes.
And that's the problem is they're lying to themselves because they did take a government vehicle. They should know after 46 years of experience that the reason they're doing it on taxpayer dollars is that they're there to respond at a moment's notice. We never know when something's going to happen. And these are the senior most people in charge of protecting the White House. They are always supposed to be ready to go at a moment's notice. That's why they took government vehicles. They were taking advantage of the situation and making taxpayers pay for their little rise there to the bar. You know, that bar is so low. The only thing that's raising on the bar is their bar tab, and it has to change. I appreciate the good work in ferreting this out. How long has Homeland Security and the Secret Service had your report? When did they get your first draft?
They received my first draft, or this draft, May 6th. We supplied the underlying materials either in the middle or late last week.
And yet there's been no consequence yet. We get reports that maybe one person's going to retire, and who knows when that's going to be. What discretion does Secretary Clancy have in revoking their security clearance?
I don't have that information.
But he could revoke their security clearance immediately, correct?
I'm not sure what the process is for revocation of security clearances. I know that there is a process that's involved, but I don't know what it is.
It could be put on non-paid leave, correct?
That's my understanding.
Do you think this is an aggravated situation?
My understanding is that non-paid leave, I don't, unfortunately, Congressman, you're getting into areas of employment law that are simply beyond my competence, and I apologize for that.
No, I think that's a fair situation. But as Mr. Russell just aptly pointed out, even if they weren't drunk and they interrupted a potential bomb scene, that's totally unacceptable. If they lied to somebody who also works for the Secret Service, that is unacceptable behavior. And if you look at what happened in the email chain, trying to protect themselves and making sure that the word didn't get read, there is plenty of evidence. This is a pivotal moment for the Secret Service. This is the time when we find out with Director Clancy and Secretary Johnson if they have the guts to do what needs to be done. Because in my opinion, these people should be fired. Today, they should lose and have their security clearances revoked. That should have happened a long time ago. And those that didn't report this, I've got a list here of people who, at some degree or another, have, at least according to your report, violated policy that could lead to their potential removal. That's Mark Conley, George Ogilvy, Kevin Simpson, Alfonso Dyson, and perhaps and probably Michael Braun. At the very least, those people, they need to be taken to the woodshed, and they should lose their security clearances. They should lose their job. And if I was the President of the United States, I would never want to see them again. I don't want to see them there. We got thousands of people, like the gentleman who was recognized for his valor, that should be protecting the President of the United States. But if you're going to go consume alcohol and then show up at the White House, disturb a crime scene, get out of here. Go home. Go find another job. Because you know what? You wouldn't be able to work at my McDonald's. You wouldn't even be able to run the French fry machine because you're not going to drink and show up to work. And you're not going to do that if you work for the Secret Service. That's what's happening. And they can continue to investigate and look at. Your report is very conclusive. It was independent in its nature. And it's time for this director and this secretary to take some definitive, conclusive action and fix the problem and send a message to the rest of the workforce. We are not going to put up with anybody who's showing up to work drunk, inebriated, lying, trying to cover up, not reporting. I mean, how many things went wrong here today? But that's my opinion. I'll yield to the ranking member, Mr. Cummings.
I want to thank you, Mr. Roth. For anybody who just tuned in, I didn't want them to think that he was talking to you. You've done a great job, really, and we really do appreciate your staff. And I know you had to pull together a lot of people in a little bit of time, but we really do appreciate it. And I agree with the chairman. Somebody asked me just a few minutes ago, how are we going to straighten this out? And I said that we're going to have to keep the pressure up. But we cannot keep the pressure up without the kind of information that you all have provided us. And I'm sure that, and I'm hopeful that, Mr. Chairman, that when Mr. Clancy comes before us, he'll have a report letting us know what disciplinary actions he's taken. But again, I want to thank you. We really do appreciate everything you've done. We also appreciate you working with us. From the very beginning, you have just been great, and your staff, so thank you.
Totally concur. My frustration is not with you, Mr. Roth, or the Inspector General's office. Without that information, we would still be left in the dark. And what you and your staff have done, good hard work, good investigative work, we're very appreciative on both sides of the aisle, and we do appreciate it. It's now our responsibility to hold the administration accountable and make sure that they fix the problem so we can stop having hearings like these. But we do wish you Godspeed. Thank you for this work and look forward to the other reports that you're still working on. This committee stands adjourned.